Hey everybody, it's Trial here, and welcome to the Ultimate Abnormality page tier list for Library of Ruina at the version of 1.1.0.4a. Here we have all the 150 Abnormality pages in the game, featuring even the newest pages from Roland's Floor, and we will be ranking all of them in one video. So let's quickly start by going over all the tiers. Object art pages are the ones that are so good that you will always take them and they shape the entirety of a floor. Limited pages are the ones that are incredibly strong, but they don't prove to be as useful as object art pages, but still have their uses and entire strategies built around them. Hardcover pages are the ones that are overshadowed by limited object art pages, but in no way are useless or weak. Paperback pages are useless and weak, and some of them are overshadowed by hardcover pages as well. Burnt pages are the ones that do more harm than good and should not be taken in any scenario unless you're running a specific build. So yeah, with that out of the way, we can start ranking the pages. First off, we have Blood. Blood is a page on Roland's Floor that drops from the Blood Boss Abnormality. It is a tier 2 page that gives you defensive dice 1 to 2 power, but you receive 3 to 5 additional stagger damage when hit. I think this page is incredibly weak. That is because Roland's Floor has never been known for its defensive capabilities, and you don't really need that 1 to 2 block power, especially when it is 1 to 2 block power. It's not a lot of power that you can gain for your block dice. And with the penalty of receiving 3 to 5 additional stagger damage per hit, you will die really quickly. With Roland's Floor you want to use a lot of attacking abilities, and by losing clashes with Blood equipped you will just die immediately, so I don't think you should take this page ever. If you're running a defensive build, you should go for Hawkman or Hot's floors, and Roland is just the worst option for that. That means Blood is definitely burned. It is so bad that you do not want to take it ever. Next we have Pale Hands from Abnormality on Roland's Floor. This is actually a great page. After 3 successful attacks on the same target, deals 3 to 10 additional stagger damage. Knowing that you will most probably use Roland's Floor on a lot of bosses for the ability of immobilization that we'll come to later, Pale Hands is really strong as it can deal enormous amounts of stagger damage, and even when not used against bosses it is still pretty useful as you can deal 3 to 10 additional stagger damage for every 3 hits. Every 3 hits. That means that with dice that can recycle, this can deal so much damage that it will be impossible to not get staggered for the enemy. So I think it goes in the limited tier because it does not shape the entirety of Roland's Floor, but it is still incredibly strong. Next up we have Scars. Scars is another page from the Blood Boss Abnormality. This one gives you the ability to take 2 to 5 less damage from slash attacks. When hit, it reduces the damage of the attack to 0 at a 20% chance. As far as I understand, it can reduce the damage of any attack to 0. Not even only slash attacks. That means that you can withstand a lot of hits without using any block dice, meaning that this page is actually useful even on Roland's Floor, even though it provides defensive capabilities, unlike Blood, which actually kills you. So even for the passive 2 to 5 less damage from slash attacks, it is already really strong, but with the ability to nullify any damage at a 20% chance, it goes in the object art tier without asking. It is incredibly strong. It is one of the best, if not the best, defensive pages in the entire game. Next we have Fervent Beats. Fervent Beats is a page from the Heart of Aspiration, and it is a tier 2 page. The selected librarian dies at the end of the third scene after this page was chosen. Gain 4 strength, endurance, haste and protection each scene until death. All stagger damage instances change to ineffective. Basically your librarian becomes a distraction machine with no stop. You gain a lot of buffs and you cannot be staggered. Basically you become so unstoppably strong that you can kill literally any enemy in this game with that librarian, but you only have 3 scenes to do that. After those 3 scenes you will die immediately. I think the payoff of this page depends on when you use it, because if you use it somewhere in the end of the fight, you will definitely get a lot of mileage out of it, because you can clean up a lot of enemies and the life of one librarian will not matter that much then. But at the start of the fight, when you get it at emotion level 3, you probably will want to avoid fervent beats, as you will basically kill one of your librarians for dealing a lot of damage to the enemy. And the librarian probably can deal a lot more damage at that point if the librarian is alive and not, you know, dead. So fervent beats is somewhere in limited or hardcover tier. It is pretty difficult for me to rank it as I haven't used it that much, though its ability is really easy to understand. I put it somewhere in the hardcover tier because it still kills your librarian and you can still do a lot more damage without the page, but it can save you in a lot of situations, so it is by no means weak. Next we have Pulsation. Pulsation is my classic for the early game builds that cannot be used anywhere else. It gives you the ability to gain 1 to 2 strengths at the end of each scene. At the end of each scene, if the librarian did not deal any damage with offensive dice, they lose 25% of their max HP. I find this page to be pretty strong as you gain 1 to 2 strengths basically free, and if you did not deal any damage with offensive dice, chances are you're already dead. So the ability might seem very punishing, but there aren't many ways to not deal damage in a scene at all. I think it still bears some kind of risk, as if you're not careful enough or if you don't have enough light to use a lot of pages, you probably can miss a couple of attacks and can result in taking 25% of your max HP as damage. Though it is kept at 30, so Eugen will not take instant damages at once, so I think it is somewhere in hardcover as well. I am not that big of a fan of Pulsation. I think you can get a lot more from tier 1 pages on Roland, like Scars for example, but you still can get a lot from this page, especially in the early game when 1 to 2 power is everything you need to instantly win a fight, so that's for sure in hardcover tier. Urgent is a great page. First it was introduced as a tier 2 page, and now it is a tier 1 page with the same buff, meaning you basically have a much faster way of buffing yourself. The buff itself is increasing max HP by 15%, and current HP increases accordingly. Gain 1 to 2 speed. Basically you gain HP and speed. That's just a simple and effective upgrade. The speed can actually seem to not be that strong, but when you have 1 to 2 more speed you can outspeed so many more enemies, and that's just incredible, in my opinion. Urgent as a tier 1 page is insane, and even as a tier 2 page it was incredible already, so it's great that the developers buffed it. Next we have Curiosity. Curiosity is what has to compete directly with Urgent, as it is a tier 1 page in a very famous Roland build, along with the Lies Abnormality page, which we will discuss later. Curiosity at the start of each scene shuffles all pages into the draw pile and draws 4 pages. Basically, you will always start the scene with 4 pages, not more, not less. That is the entire thing of Curiosity, so you always have enough pages to use in one scene, but you will never have more pages than 4, so you cannot wait with a certain page to use it later. It might seem really weird, but in conjunction with Lies, it can give the ability to spam a lot of pages at once, especially with the famous Shed Roland build. I think Curiosity, after its nerf, before it was 6 pages, now it is 4, is kind of in the limited tier, maybe even hardcover. Before it was probably Object Dart, as it would just give you an infinite deck. Now that deck is kind of limited, as you only have 4 pages in your hand, and you cannot really use more pages than 4. Next we have Lies. Lies is the scene randomizes the costs of all pages whose original cost is less than 4. In conjunction with Curiosity, it can give you the ability to run a deck of only 3 cost pages that can lower their cost and always have 4 of them in the hand, meaning you don't have to use any Light Region or Page Draw and just use incredibly strong pages at once and just kill everyone. Lies unlike Curiosity, Lies is actually really strong on its own, because you can lower the cost of really any 3 cost page easily, so with kind of Miranaea deck it can work as well, without even its brother here working together. Next we have Learn, a page from Pinocchio as well, which adds the Learn page to the hand. Cost 2, start of clash, replace all dice with ones on the opponent's page. The page is also included in the deck at the start of subsequent X. Well, Learning is a strong page because many bosses like to have the incredible trump card, which is basically their strongest page. With Learning you can copy that page, and if you have any kinds of buffs you will be stronger than your enemy, even if you are using something that can one-shot you. In many situations it can save your life really easily, and especially with the cheese against the aspiration part in the kit realization, where you can use Learn to copy like 7 counter block dice and just decimate everyone with stagger damage. So Learn definitely goes into high limited tier. It's not as incredibly strong as you have to use a tier 2 slot on Roland's floor to use it. It's not like there are a lot of tier 2 Roland's floor pages that are incredibly strong, but there are a couple that you would probably want to use over Learn, so I think it is in the limited tier. It is not as incredibly strong as you could expect it to be. Next we have a Kiss, a page from the Snow Queen. After winning 2 or more clashes with a single combat page, inflict Ice Splinter to the opponent. At the end of each scene, characters with 3 or more Ice Splinters become immobilized for the next scene. Well, before it was a page of tier 2, we should make it here. It is the strongest page on Ron's floor, or at least it was. Now it is on tier 3, so it directly combats with Blizzard, another tier 3 Ron's page that works with immobilization. I think Kiss is still a stronger page than Blizzard, because it can let you continuously immobilize your opponent even though it is a tier 3. It's just 1 or 2 if you used on emotional 3 emotions behind what it was before, so I think it is a pretty fair and normal change to put it at tier 3, at tier 3, and that kind of puts it down to limited, but it is still very strong and useful. Maybe actually low object dot. I think I like this page a lot to this day. Next we have Blizzard, another tier 3 page from the Snow Queen. All characters except the selected librarian become immobilized for the scene. Next scene, all enemies are inflicted with 6 bind. This lets you use one scene to your liking with only one librarian, so you can target an enemy, you can set up some kind of ability, you can do a lot of stuff. With the newly added Bayard, you can actually immobilize him so he can get a lot of strength from immobilization, so there are a lot of abilities that can go well with Blizzard. Do I think in the terms of actually immobilizing your enemies and getting buffs from that, not the real buffs, but getting profit from actually immobilizing your enemy, Kiss is a lot better in that part, and even though this can open a Bayard deck, this is only a one-time use Abnormality page that cannot use this ability again, so I don't think you should prioritize it over Kiss, so that's why it is in limited tier. Next we have Sword of Frost, the last Abnormality page of the Snow Queen. Upon winning a clash, inflict 1 to 3 bind to the opponent at a 50% chance. Deal plus 2 to 5 target damage against targets with bind. Basically, if you win a clash, you inflict bind, which makes your enemy slower, and you gain stagger damage against slower enemies. That is really strong. I think it is a page that you will probably want to take alongside another tier 2 page that we will discuss later, and it is really strong. It deals a lot of stagger damage, and it makes your enemy slower. Against bosses it is just insane, because you can deal a lot of stagger damage, and dealing stagger damage to bosses is already a great thing, and you can actually bind them, which is also really strong, as most bosses have a lot of speed that they can use to overpower you easily. So I think that goes in the limited tier, somewhere above Lorien, I think, maybe actually above Blizzard. It is incredibly strong. I find Sword of Frost to be really useful on tier 2. And next we have our last Abnormality on Ron's floor, the Silent Girl, with her ability Guild. Reduce incoming stagger damage by 1 to 3. When hit, the attacker takes stagger damage equal to the physical damage of the character received. Well, I honestly think this page is insane, but the fact that this is a breakdown page makes it a lot worse, because it is difficult to obtain breakdown pages in general. But the ability of this page basically means that you take less stagger damage, and the stagger damage you take turns into physical damage and gets thrown at your opponent. No, actually, it's backwards. The amount of physical damage you take is thrown at the opponent as stagger damage. Basically, this can make some person in your team a tank that can work well with scars and just decimate enemies with stagger damage, while not taking a lot of damage themselves. I think this page is incredibly strong, though it is breakdown, so I wouldn't put it as high as something like scars, which is really easy to get, but it is still very useful, and I would recommend going for guild if you know how to manage negative emotion coins. Next we have Hammer and Nail. Hammer and Nail is one of my favorite pages on Round's floor. Upon a successful pierce attack, inflict 1 nail to the target. If a character with nails is hit by a blunt attack, they take bonus damage equal to 5 times the amount of nails in them. Then all stacks of nails are removed. I'm sorry for reading that out loud really badly, but you still get the point. Basically, you deal 5 times the amount of nails with true damage. That means that it bypasses any kinds of resistance, and it is just incredibly strong damaging page that works well passively, and if you build an entire team around it, you can kill enemies in seconds. So that's definitely somewhere in the object tier, probably around Urgent, maybe above it. Maybe actually above Scars. I enjoy this page a lot. I'm giving my biased opinion here, but I still think it is incredibly strong and incredibly useful for a tier 2 page that is actually awakening, so it is really easy to get. Next we have Leer, our last tier 3 abnormality page on Ron's floor. Deal and take twice as much physical damage. A really simple and an effective ability. I'll put it somewhere in the limited tier because it can kill you, but in many situations, like using strong summation mass attack pages, you can deal so much damage that it's just hard to overlook its ability. Even though you are taking a lot of damage yourself, that doesn't really matter if you kill your enemies first, right? Maybe it's actually somewhere in the object tier. I enjoy this page, though it is not as consistent as some of the other pages, because this is a tier 3 page that also makes you very fragile, so if you're unlucky enough to take it right before the enemy's mass attack, you will probably die immediately. So there are a couple of situations where Leer can help the enemies kill you, but in most situations you would just decimate everything and everyone that you come in contact with after doubling your physical damage. And next we have Lore of History, with the abnormality page Scotch Gold. First we have Ashes, an awakening tier 1 page. When hit, inflict 1-3 burn to the attacker, and gain a buff at a 30% chance the next scene. Offensive dice inflict 1 burn on hit. Sadly, this ability does not stack, so you cannot inflict insane amounts of burn to the enemy, but still 1 burn per each hit is an ability that I think costs about 4 slots when got from the Crying Children's page or Phillips page, so it is still a really strong buff as it saves you 4 slots, and it afflicts burn when hit, which is also another ability, but I think this one costs only 1 slot, so it doesn't really matter that much. Basically it has 2 abilities from an Urban Nightmare level reception thrown into a really early game page that you can slap onto that page, so you can make a very strong burn warrior that actually benefits from being hit. So I think Ashes is just a generally really strong page that works really well in many situations. Even in the early game, when you don't have that many pages that work well with burn, you still can inflict a lot of burn from just Ashes and nothing more. Next we have Footfalls. Footfalls is a tier 2 breakdown page of the same abnormality. When a librarian's HP, fuck, I am worse than I thought it was. When a librarian's HP is at 20% or lower, deal 30% of the target's max HP as damage, and inflict 1-3 burn upon approaching them, then die. Basically, you have 20% less HP as your max HP, but you can inflict a lot of damage when you have the 20 HP and die. Status damage is kept at 36, so that's not too great, I think. That only means that you can deal the max amount of damage that is actually 30% of the HP to like enemies that have about 108 HP, and that's not that high, but I think with the fact that many early game enemies have a lot lower HP than that, you can have a lot of mileage out of footfalls at the start of the game, though it falls off really hardly like in the urban legend tier. At that point you probably will want to save your librarian and use them for attacks instead of just throwing them at the enemy and make them explode. So that page goes somewhere in the hardcover tier. No, actually let's put it in the paperback tier, because it only benefits you for a short amount of time before becoming really useless and not worth it. Next we have Meshlight. The first two combat pages the librarian uses after this Abnormality page is selected gains a Meshlight status. Excludes on-play pages. Whenever the librarian uses a page with Meshlight, gain 1 Ember. Pages with Meshlight become stronger based on the amount of Ember, however, they have a 25% chance to damage the user if Ember is at 4 or higher. As far as I remember, the becoming stronger part means that they gain power equal to your amounts of Ember, but you can take the damage instead of the enemy sometimes when you use the page if you are at 4 or more Ember. But also, as far as I remember, Ember cannot kill you, meaning you can stay at 1 HP with like 200 Ember and decimate everyone with like a single page. So it has a lot of mileage out of it because you can get a lot of strength, like literally unlimited strength, though you can't hit yourself, but it is still really strong and really useful. In certain strategies it can literally kill bosses on its own, so you can definitely use it somewhere. I think it is in the limited tier because I don't find it to be just game-breakingly good, but it is still useful and you will probably take it if you're not running a Happy Memory strategy. Next we have the Habitatory Beer. Next we have the Habitatory Beer on the Marquis floor, the second abnormality. First we have the Abnormality page, Display of Affection. All dice gain 1 to 2 power in a clash, all dice lose 1 to 2 power in one standard attack. I think it is a great page because you don't really need the power in one-sided attacks, but you really need the power during clashes. So it makes you less of a one-side damager, so you cannot do enormous amounts of damage to your enemy from just taking them from behind, but you can really easily clash with your enemies and deal a lot of damage to them that way, as well as win a lot of clashes and gain a lot of positive emotion cards. So I think it is a really useful page, though I am not really taking it a lot. I've never taken it... there never has been a point when I just took Display of Affection all the time. I find it to be useful, but not as useful as some other pages on Marquis floor with tier 1, so it is strong, definitely really strong in the early game, but at some point it really falls off and you don't really use it anymore. Next we have one of the best pages on Marquis floor, Happy Memories. Happy Memories is a tier 1 Abnormality page, that is an Awakening page, so it is really easy to get, and the combat page with the highest cost in hand is chosen, and using pages with the same name will decrease the cost of every copy of the page the character currently owns by 1. Basically, if you have a lot of the same page and you use one of them with Happy Memories equipped, all the other ones will get their cost lowered. Basically this means that you can lower the cost of half your deck if you're running a clone deck, and with something like Rapid Gashes or Bunch of Death or Blazing Strike, you can do so much damage easily, and that will cost no light, so you only have to worry about page draw really. That really makes it one of the best pages in the entire game, I think. It has an entire strategy dedicated to it, and it is definitely really strong. Also, I feel like the object.t is getting a little crowded, maybe we should put some of these pages lower, but we will get to that later, I guess. Next we have Nostalgic Embrace of the Old Days. Upon winning a clash, deal bonus staggered damage equal to the state's value at 20% chance. Clashing against the same target multiple times will increase the likelihood. Basically, you can deal a lot of additional staggered damage. It is a tier 1 page, so it directly clashes with Happy Memories, and you will probably not take it above Happy Memories, but I like taking this page nonetheless, because when used with like Bundle of Death or Blazing Strike, the aforementioned pages, if you use Nostalgic Embrace of those days, plus Happy Memories, you can deal so much stagger damage, like you can deal 100 stagger damage in a single attack, and you can do like 3 attacks at once, and you'll just incredibly easily kill everyone. Though it is a very unlikely thing to happen, but you still can manage that if you run the strategy properly, and I think it belongs somewhere in the limited tier. It's not as strong as Ashes, not as game breaking as Happy Memories, but it is still really strong, and I really like to use it. It is somewhere here with Sword of Frost as a page that deals a lot of stagger damage. Next we have the Abnormality page Fairy Festival and its first ability Gluttony. Gluttony is a tier 2 Awakening on the Abnormality page, and it works like this. When attacking a target who already took damage in the same scene, deal 1 to 3 additional damage and recover 2 to 5 HP on hit. Basically, if you've hit an enemy once, nothing will happen, but on the second hit you will receive HP and deal more damage. This works really well with the Ego page Wing Beat that is gotten from the same Abnormality, and you can deal so much damage and heal so much HP with those recycling dice. So any kind of recycling dice just easily break Gluttony, and if you have a lot of dice, all of them will be affected by Gluttony, so that means you can heal insane amounts of HP on Eugen, and Eugen being the one who can use Bundle of Death with Happy Memories, which we just called a really strong Abnormality page. So basically Gluttony is up there really. It is really strong, it is my favorite pick on tier 2 Malchus Abnormality pages, and that's just something I recommend you using, because it's really strong, it is really useful, and really there's no excuse for not using it. Like, what else are you gonna use? Next we have Predation, which actually directly clashes with Gluttony. It is a tier 2 page from Fairy Festival, but it is a breakdown page instead of a awakening page, and all allies except the selected Librarian lose 10 HP. The Librarian recovers as much HP as other lost from this effect and gains 3 strength and 3 health next scene. Well, the healing effect is actually pretty good, because it is somewhat a reversed old Wine Abnormality page. It was changed, the Wine Abnormality page, but this one's kind of the reverse of that. You take HP from your allies and gain 3 strength and haste. Sadly, the strength and haste buffs are only for one scene, so you won't really use them for a lot. It is a bit similar in that regard to Fervent Beats, that you have a strong buff but only for a short amount of time, but this one doesn't kill you and actually makes Librarian gets healthier. And also if you're running some kind of solo build, it's just 3 strength and haste for one scene, so that's also not that bad of a usage. I think for tier 2 you can get better pages, for example Gluttony, but it is still pretty useful and you can recover a lot of HP from that, especially when running the aforementioned Eugen. So I will put it somewhere in the limited... well, actually let's put it in the hardcover here, because it is outshined, that's true. Next we have the Fairy's Care. For 3 scenes, recover 15% of max HP, max 18, at the end of the scene. If the Librarian is hit 3 times while this effect is active, lose 25% of current HP and lose this effect. Basically you recover HP every scene for 3 scenes, up to a maximum of recovering 45% of HP, but you lose 25% of current HP if you take 3 hits. Basically, if you are careful enough, you can recover enormous amounts of HP, and if you aren't, well, hope that you have gotten through 2 scenes with this ability, because if you got through 2 scenes, you will recover 30% and then lose 25%, so it will cancel out, you will still get HP. especially knowing that you lose 95% of current HP, but recover 15% of max HP, meaning you will recover more HP than you lose. So it is still a positive effect, though for tier 1 there are a lot of better pages like this and this. All the teddy bear pages are really strong, so I think the Fairy Scare, it is outshined really strongly. I don't even want to put in the hardcover tier, I think it put it somewhere in high paperback. Also because you can lose HP, so yeah, that's also a downside. Loyalty is a tier 3 page from the Queen Bee Abnormality. At the start of the scene, all allies gain 1 strength, all allies gain strength based on the amount of damage the selected librarian received on the previous scene, 1 strength per 5 damage. Basically, if you take damage, all other allies get strength. It is a strong page because you can run it on some kind of self-harm build, provided you have a lot of healing, and you can have a lot of healing with Gluttony. So I think Loyalty is not that bad of a page. It is really useful in the right hands and in the right build. It's definitely strong enough to be chosen as a tier 3 page, but only if you have a librarian that has a lot of HP at that point, because there are many situations where all of your librarians are low at emotion level 5, so you won't get that much strength from loyalty without having your librarian die, and you will probably need to have your clashes be a bit weaker, because you want to take damage to make this effect active, because if you don't take damage, you take less than 5 damage every scene, you will not proc it at all, so you really need to take damage while also healing enough, while also not dying. So yeah, it's limited tier, it is not as incredibly strong as Object Dart pages are, but it is still very useful. Next we have Worker Bee. The enemy who deals the most damage to the selected librarian is marked. Other allies deal 2 to 4 more damage to the marked foe with their attacks. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's so strong that you should pick it all the time. It's not like incredibly strong in general. I mean, we have Gluttony as a tier 2 page. We have Wines that we will discuss later. I don't think Worker Bee should be picked a lot. You can pick it before you get the realization of Malekith's Flaw, but after that I don't think you will ever pick Worker Bee again, because it's only 2 to 4 more damage to one enemy that has to actually damage you beforehand, and has to damage you more than anyone else, so it does pick out the greatest threat, but still, that's only a buff that doesn't even deal damage itself. You still have to target that enemy, and if it is some kind of boss, then yeah, it's probably useful, but in other situations you probably will want to avoid this page at all. Yeah, I think it's under pulsation, it's in the low hardcover tier. Maybe actually paperback tier, I don't like this page at all. Next we have Spores. When hit inflicts Matter 3 burn and Matter 3 bleed to the attack next scene. You remember Ashes? Well, this one takes away the offensive capability of Ashes and makes it another defensive capability, because it inflicts burn on top, inflicts bleed on top of burn, so it is really strong. It's not as strong as Ashes, not even as strong as some of these high limited tier pages. It is somewhere here alongside Pale Hands, which probably should be buffed. Spores is really useful when running a burn team, because you can inflict even more burn, up to 2 to 6 burn with Ashes equipped as well, which will make you an incredibly strong defensive burner, which is a very weird niche, but Malekith's Flaw tends to have weird niches with burns, so that's nice, that's useful. Next we have Barrier of Thorns, a tier 3 awakening page, and when hit, you inflict 2 to 8 damage and 1 to 3 bind to the attacker. If 3 bind was inflicted once, recover HP equal to the amount of damage dealt with this effect. Once again, with the abilities of Ashes and Spores, you can deal a lot of damage when hit, basically making another tank that kills enemies while being attacked. It is as useful as Spores in my opinion, as it is a tier 3 page, so there are a couple of stronger pages that you can choose on Malekith's Flaw, I think. like the aforementioned loyalty, but I think those should be buffed like this. But it does heal you at some points, and as I already said, Bind is a pretty strong debuff that can help you a lot against bosses especially, so you should really take this page if you are running Spores and Nations already, because it can just make one of your librarians a defensive tank, I mean offensive tank. That's really strong. Next we have Malice. As part of this scene, all enemies take damage inversely proportional to the amount of HP the librarian has left. It says this scene, but I don't know if it is used each scene or only on one scene. It has a minimum of 5 damage and a maximum of 30 damage. 30 damage to all enemies is basically a must stack, but on tier 3, if it is single use, it's not as strong, but if it's multiple use, it is incredible. I'm pretty sure it is only on one scene, and you have to use it on the librarian with the lowest HP, so you can deal the highest amount of damage, as if you have low HP, you can deal a lot of damage. If you have high HP already, you will not deal a lot of damage, as it scales with the amount of HP you currently have. So I think Malice is somewhere in the hardcover tier. It is not awful, it is pretty useful in situations when you have enemies that have low HP and allies that have low HP, and you have to somehow clean them up without using your allies because you will lose. I had that situation sometimes before, and I think it's useful because you don't have to clash. There isn't a way for the enemy to avoid the attack, you just do damage. So it is not bad, but you probably won't take it over Barrier of Thorns or Loyalty, so that's hardcover for sure. Next we have Vines. Vines is a really strong tier 2 page, I like it a lot. For the rest of the act, inflict 6 bind to random enemies outside of the scene. Pierce dice gain 1 to 2 power when attacking that enemy. Yeah, 6 bind to random enemy. Now imagine a boss existing. Yep, that's basically plus 1 to 2 power to pierce dice. And the boss is immobilized, basically. So that's really strong. Even not against bosses, it is really strong, as you can pick out the enemy with vines really easily, as they have a cool visual effect on them, and just attack them with pierce dice. Get a full pierce deck on some librarian, give that librarian vines, and the librarian will just continue to kill everyone and everything in sight. I think vines is at least limited, maybe even object dart. I don't know if I'm biased if I put it somewhere in object dart, but I really think I should. It's somewhere in conjunction with... oh wait, hammer nails here. No, it's not a strong hammer nail, okay. Let's put it under Leah. I think it is kind of similar to hammer nail in that you can run a full pierce deck on one librarian, and that will just make your entire team stronger. And now we move on to Yesod's flow, the flow of technological sciences. We start with the Abnormality for Forsaken Murderer. We have Violence, lower the minimum value for all dice by 1 and raise the maximum value by 3. Before it was a really weird page that needed blunt dice to roll the maximum value, now it just enhances your dice, but also lowers the minimum value by 1. I think it is still really strong. You will probably not have a lot of situations when you roll under your normal lowest value with the amount of maximum value added. The probability of that happening is just too low. So I think it is really useful, especially if you have dice that can recycle, so you can have a lot more strength out of that. It works really well with pages like Soul Lament, if it works on ego pages, that is. And it can give you a lot of strength out of that, so I think Violence in general is a really strong option that will be taken out of context, but yeah. Next we have Metallic Ringen, one of my favorite pages on Yesod's flow. Upon successful blunt attack, inflict 1 bind and paralysis next scene. You remember I brought up Soul Lament when talking about violence. Well, with Metallic Ringen, Soul Lament can inflict 8 paralysis and 8 bind to an enemy with a ranged attack, and deal enormous damage, and stagger damage. It works really well with all the other assets Yesod's flow has given us, and with the fact that Yesod's flow is known as a smoke flow and smoke builds known for having a lot of blunt dice, Metallic Ringen is easily going into object dart tier, maybe even above Hammer and Nail. Probably not as game-breaking and strong as Happy Memories, but it also has a lot of strategies dedicated to utilizing it. Next we have Chain Dress. Chain Dress is a tier 2 page that gives your blunt dice 1 to 3 power. Speed is fixed at 1. It might not seem like a strong page, and it's not until you get another key page. After you gain the key page of the Red Mist, you can attribute her ability the strongest to one of your people on your slot's floor. Then with that ability, you take Chain Dress, and you have a lineup of infinite speed dice and 1 to 3 power to blunt dice. Coming back to the whole soul moment argument, you can deal so much damage from that at infinite speed, so you will always outspeed your enemy, and it's just so incredibly strong when used in conjunction with that. But that's only one strategy, and there isn't much it can do that isn't the strategy. So I think I'd put it somewhere in hardcover tier, but know that with the right build it is definitely Object Dart above Happy Memories. It is just so strong and so disgustingly game breaking, that's insane. Next we have Recharge, a tier 2 page that was tier 1 at first. The Librarian has maximum light at the start of the scene, gain 1 to haste and deal an additional 2 to 7 damage with dice for the scene. Basically, if you gain another emotion level, you will immediately restore light, and that will give you haste and damage. That's useful. And even when not upgrading your emotion level, at high emotion levels you can easily manage getting full light every scene if you are careful enough with your light region. So you can always outspeed your enemies and always deal a lot of damage. You really don't even need high cost pages with this ability, because 2 to 7 damage can easily supply you with all the amount of strength you really need. So you only need a lot of light region and some decently strong pages at 2 cost, and that deck will get you through early game easily, and will actually work as well in somewhere like Side of the City, so it is really strong. The page, it changed. Before, Charge was a different page, and now that page went into repetitive pattern recognition, and I don't even remember the original version of repetitive pattern recognition, but now it is incredibly strong. After 3 clash wins, restore 1 light and gain 1 to haste next scene. With Recharge, it can give you both light to use Recharge and haste on top of Recharge's haste, so you have 2 to 4 haste basically every scene, and you can actually stack those hastes and light by winning more than 3 clashes, or I mean more than 6 clashes in one scene, meaning you will proc the ability twice a single scene, which will be just insane. You can have so much speed with this ability, that's insane. This is probably the one time when Mio's page is not attributed to Gabriel, and you can actually like use it on your slot's floor and have a lot of mana shot of this ability without using strongest. So I think this page in entirety is so strong. I never thought it put this page so high, but after its remake it deserves that, it definitely does. Next we have Clean. Offensive dice gain power against enemies with lower speed, +1 power per point of difference up to 3. With the ability Mio's Prowess, it can help you gain up to 8 strengths against enemies with lower speed, and once again, coming back to the Unchained Dress strategy, you can use your infinite speed dice to have always a +3 power, which will also help you a lot. Clean is basically an earlier version of Mio's Prowess that works really well because it only needs 1 point of difference to get strengths, so that's really useful. Somewhere in the limited tier, I think it's actually in Object Dart tier. You probably won't use anything else on tier 2 that isn't Recharge and Clean. Well, that means that I should probably put it next to Recharge, so let's put it there. Okay, next we have Singing Machine. Music is a tier 2 page. What's interesting is that I remember it being a tier 1 page, I think. Maybe a tier 2. But now it is tier 3. All characters deal +4 to 8 damage with stacks this reception. They also suffer 48 additional stagger damage upon taking a hit. I don't know why they would put it like they deal more damage and suffer more stagger damage, when in reality it only works like the fact that you deal and take plus 48 both physical and stagger damage. This makes both teams really close to glass cannons, and with the ability of Unchained Res, you can clean up the entire enemy team even if they're at full HP, you just don't care. I find music to be pretty useful in conjunction with other pages like this, that can give you a lot of strengths that you can put the damage and stagger damage on top of, so you can just decimate everyone with the amount of damage and stagger damage you're doing at once. So I think music is not a bad page by any means, but it is risky to take, as in some situations it will probably kill you. So you have to be really careful with. I think it's somewhere in the low limited tier. I can't give it a hardcover, especially when the source is known as a smoke flow where pure damage is really useful. Next we have musical addiction. Offensive dice gain 1 to 3 power, defensive dice roll 1. I don't like this page. 1 to 3 power for offensive dice is useful, yeah, for tier 2 it's still really good. But defensive dice rolling 1 is like, it's really weak. Because most of my decks have defensive dice, that's for sure. I love using block dice to really not take any damage from the enemy, because I nullify all the damage by rolling just a bit lower than them, or dealing a lot of stagger damage in return. Realistically, block dice are a crucial part of your strategy, and just giving them up for a slight power increase is not that strong. But once again, coming back to the Unchained Res strategy, you can use musical addiction as well, so you can deal enormous damage, though I think Clean still has an edge over that, because it gives you 3 strengths always without any downsides, while this one can give you 1, 2 or 3 strengths and makes your defensive dice roll 1. So I think it is just overshadowed by other tier 2 pages, and in reality it is really risky to take, and many times it doesn't even pay off. So I think it's somewhere in the paperback tier, probably higher than just killing yourself, but still pretty low. Next we have Rhythm, a tier 1 breakdown page. For the duration of the battle, gain 1 rhythm inside of the scene. Whenever a character with rhythm makes a successful attack, a random character gains 1 rhythm at a 25% chance next scene. Rhythm, gain 1 strength, take additional stagger damage from hits, last 1 scene. Basically it's once again an ability that gives you, that makes you a glass cannon, I mean. It's not that strong, it makes you a stagger glass cannon, which is awful in my opinion, so I think it should go somewhere in the paperback tier alongside musical addiction. Also, we are running low on time and we really have a lot of things to cover, so I'll be quick on all of the other useful pages. We have Coffin, that's for sure another dark tier, even though it is tier 3 now, before it was tier 2, but now it is still tier 3, still really strong, still really useful if you're not running Unchained Res, so you probably should take it unless you run music with Unchained Res. Next we have Eternal Rest, plus damage plus stagger damage against lower current HP, a boss killer, that's for sure somewhere in the limited tier. Next, Lament, a fucking incredible page with smoke bills. I love this page a lot, just gives you strength and additional damage with smoke is just insane. I love this page a lot, probably, no, actually over Coffin, I love this page a lot. And it is tier 1 now, it's so strong. Dark Flame, a tier 3 page, makes you once again a glass cannon, but this one gives you 2 to 4 strength, so it's pretty useful. I still find it to be a bit less useful than music. Whatever the page was, this I think is music. It's still not as strong as music in my opinion, because it makes you a very glassy over cannon, so maybe not use that, so maybe put it somewhere in hardcover tier, I actually think it's hardcover. Next we have request. That's useful, and you have an entire achievement locked behind this page. And you can fully recover stack resist by killing the marked target that is marked by the page, so, well, why wouldn't you take it? For tier 1 it's not that bad. Before it was just giving you a mess stack page that is one-time use, now it is much stronger and much more useful. In my opinion, somewhere here. The Seventh Bullet has now been upped to a tier 2. Still deals 1 to 7, no, it actually deals 1 to 7 damage randomly. Before it was fixed on 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on until the 8th scene when you will hit a random attack. But now it is just genuinely useful. A lot of additional damage, and as I already said, additional damage on your sword is very useful, so we put it somewhere here, I think, probably under Nostalgic Embrace. And now we have Hot's Floor. I'll be really blunt with this one as well. I don't think many Hot's Floor pages need to have any kind of introduction. I'll quickly tell you about the pages I want to tell you the most about, so let's just get started. Shyness is a page that works really well on defensive builds to buff the defense, but doesn't really work well on offensive builds to buff their defense, so it is just a page that puts you into a loop of defense. Social Distancing, on the other hand, it just gives you additional defense with no question asked. You also yield a lot of stagger damage and deflects, that's nice. Look of the Day. Pretty useful if you know how to time it. It will be really strong. Just play the bottom corporation and you'll get used to it. X slash dice are incredibly strong. Many slash dice inflict bleed. Hot is known as a bleed flow. Put it all together, X is good. Now we do the same thing with Obsession. Bleed good. Obsession good. Yep, monkey brain. Don't need to really explain you anything about Obsession. It is really strong. It is a staple of Hot's Floor builds, so why wouldn't you take it all the time? Well, you might be running a block and strategy on Hot, but I still think that Hawkman is strong in that regard. Glitter. Glitter is weird. Inside of each scene, each enemy is looted at a 50% chance, and looted enemies gain 2 to 4 damage for their attacks and prioritize the select librarian as a target. But the librarian gains 1 to power in clashes against looted enemies. If you have the ability to clash with everyone, aka counter dice, you can gain a lot of strength out of glitter. It also can be worth it to take glitter when you're running some kind of solo build on Hot's Floor, but I can't really be sure. I've never actually tried that, so I think glitter is somewhere there. Yeah. Next we have Cocoon. On hit is a dice rolled maximum value, takes 1 to paralysis, bind and fragile next scene. Just incredible debuffs that aren't updated enough. This is somewhere in the limited tier. I just love this page a lot. You have to roll maximum value, but many pages have like a 3 to 4 roll, so there's a 50% chance to do this, and that's insane. Next we have Alertness. You just make enemies lose 1 power in clashes, and you inflict Bind and Fragile at a 50% chance. Once again, when used in conjunction with Cocoon, it can deal so many Bind and Fragile. It's so strong. Bind and Fragile stacks, I mean. Meal is not as strong. It gives you the ability to heal to the 4 HP when attacking a staggered enemy. It's not incredible. I find it to be useful in some situations, but not as incredible and as useful as it might be. Though with Eugen, with the funny prank, the Abnormality page, it can prove to be pretty useful because Eugen likes healing a lot. Next we have Friend. Sneaks a friend into one of your combat pages, and the page with a friend gains 2 to 4 power. However, if you do not use it in 2 scenes, it deals 2 to 7 damage to the librarian. 2 to 4 power is insane, and just having to use a page is not that big of a deal in good builds, so like with 2 to 4 power to all dice, I mean, that's an easy pick for me. Next we have Funny Prank. Funny Prank makes you always roll either the minimum or the maximum value. If you roll the minimum value, take 2 to 7 damage. It is really useful with Eugen, who likes to run Bunch of Death, making Bunch of Death a 50% chance to deal 50 damage to the enemy. So it's an insane strategy. It is very useful and very popular as well, but it is pretty risky to take otherwise, so I think for that one strategy itself it is somewhere in the limited tier, but in other situations you probably would not want to take it. Surprise gift. The first opponent to clashing is the Cycle Librarian gets the gifted status. If they clash with a different librarian, they can explode, taking 2 to 7 damage and getting to bleed 3 to them. Basically, it is the reverse version of Friend that works on your enemies, and it is really strong as you can easily control what librarians the enemy is clashing with, so it's really useful. You can deal a lot of damage with it. I think it's somewhere in the limited tier, not a high limited tier, but not that strong. It is a tier 1 page, so you will probably take it in many stations. Next we have Gooey Waste. I fucking love this page. It inflicts Fragile, Bleed and Paralysis and Bind to all enemies twice per scene, so that's just so strong. That's a lot of debuffs to the entire enemy team. Really worth it on multiple act fights, but not as strong on bosses. Speaking about bosses, we have Level 1 Parasol here. It gives you speed and the ability to nullify all damage taken and turns it into stagger damage and deal it to the enemy, so why wouldn't you want that? It's probably somewhere in the object tier as well. It is really strong. I think it's somewhere around Gooey Waste. It's contender. Next we have Level 1 Family, which gives you Metal Clothing, which gives you protection equal to the amount of stack. A stack of Metal Clothing is locked at the end of the scene. Each scene. It's not as strong as the other two options. I find it to be overshadowed by them, so why would you take it? Next we have Echoes from the Beyond. Deal 5 to 10 stagger damage to all enemies. All allies recover 5 to 10 stagger resist. This page breaks the early game and then falls off in later parts of the game, so I put it somewhere in the hardcover tier because it is really strong at the start, but it's so useful, so useless after like a bomb plague that you will not use it at all. Next we have Tentacles. It is actually a percentile version of this. Basically, on the successful pierce attack, reduce the max stagger resist of target by 5%. After 50%, you can just easily reduce the max stagger, and if the enemy you've attacked with Tentacles comes back from stagger, they will still have less stagger than they would have usually. So I mean, it's still very useful, still incredibly strong in my opinion. Somewhere in the limited tier, no, I think it's somewhere in hardcover tier as well. Okay, no, it's in the limited tier. That's not the right page. Next, Incomprehensible. On the one-sided attack, inflict 1 feeble and 1 disarm next scene at a 50% chance. That's just insane. Just attack an enemy from afar, I guess, and you can do this 3 times per engagement. The likelihood increases by 10% for every successful attack, so it is just useful and very strong. I probably think it's somewhere in the object tier, not because it is just so game-breaking strong, and because there isn't a lot you can take on Nezek otherwise. You just want to take Incomprehensible. Next you have Attack on a Friendship, which is kind of Incomprehensible's only rival. For 3 scenes, all allies recover 10% max HP. At the start of the scene, no other abilities, all allies recover HP up to 30% of HP. That's great, that's always useful. I love that page a lot. Pebble, recover 3, you gain Pebble on 3 random pages in hand and recover 37 HP when using them, but lose 1 to 3 HP upon not using them. Basically, if you use a certain page, you heal HP. If you use anything but the certain page, you will lose HP, so you have to somehow draw that page into a hand back so you can heal. I still don't understand the real ability of Fevel, I find it to be strange, but I think some people like it a lot, so I wouldn't put it in paperback, that's for sure. I put it somewhere in hardcover tier, high hardcover tier. It's useful, I guess. Teardrop, dice power +1 on dice all characters take 50% of this character's max HP as damage. It is weird, before it was just awful and useless, now it is not awful and useless, it is just awful. You gain +1 power, which is nice, it's actually pretty useful, but the on-DOS effect is not that useful at all. At least you can, like, halve your enemy's HP. I don't know when you would want to do that on death, not you also attack your allies, but I don't know. Maybe at some points it was somewhat useful. And dice power +1 is strong, but for tier 2, paperback tier. Now we have Elation, dice power +1, once again, reduce max attack resist by 50%. Yep. Why would you take it for 1 dice power? I mean, this is tier 1, certainly dice power +1 on tier 1 strong, but having your entire max stagger gauge is not a great idea. Laughing Powder, that's so strong. I don't know why they made half of Nezek's pages just garbage and half of them like incredibly strong. Laughing Powder is so strong that if you're running some kind of like half-assed block build on Nezek, that will still work because of Laughing Powder, and it works on every ally, and it basically protects your entire team from weak attacks and from their stagger damage. You can actually heal from some of the attacks if you're running a build with a lot of protection or a lot of block dice. You can heal so much stagger damage from just taking damage. That's weird and that's useful. Next we have Storms. On successful pierce attack, inflict 1 thrill to the target against targets with 3 thrill, deal 2 7 bonus damage and stagger damage. Then remove all stacks of thrill. Before it was 5 stacks I think, but now it is 3 stacks, now it is really useful. It also deals additional damage, before it only dealt stagger damage. And why did the dog barking out of my window? I'm trying to record here, but okay. It is really useful for tier 1, I think you will probably take it, knowing that Nezek has a lot of pierce dice support. You will probably want to take Thorns as a part of that pierce dice support. You can deal a lot of additional damage, so it is useful. I don't know if it is object guard or limited, I think it's somewhere in the limited tier, but it is high limited tier, that's for sure, it is really useful. Next we have the Abnormality Alrion, and her abilities Autumn's Person. When hit inflicts 1 aroma, aroma side of the scene, take stagger damage equal to the amount of aroma and have the stack. Why would you take it? That's a wasted tier 2 slot. You just basically like can deal 5 more stagger damage each 2 scenes, like why? Why would you take Autumn's Person? That's not worth it at all. Next we have Flower Petals. Each time the Barbarian sustains damage greater than 10% of the HP, all enemies take 40 stagger damage and the Barbarian recovers 5 to 10 HP. This one is actually really strong because you can recover HP and stagger damage from that, and you will take a lot of damage, and if you're running a full soul Nezek build for this page, you will gain a lot of mileage out of Flower Petals as well, so I think it is somewhere in the high limited tier. It's not insanely broken, but it is really useful. Next we have Spring's Genesis, and each scene a petal attaches to a random character. After the character with the petal takes 4 hits in a single scene, all characters take 3 to 7 stagger damage and the Librarian becomes targetable for the next scene. I'm pretty sure that this ability can only target all characters except the staggered Librarian, so you have to go in the fight with one Librarian without any other Librarians. So the petal is always attached to an enemy, so you can attack the enemy 4 times and you will become targetable for the next scene. You will also make the enemies take 3 to 7 stagger damage. You probably take the stagger damage yourself, but with Mind Caller and 4 hits on enemy every scene, you don't really care about that damage at all, so it is useful, it is incredibly useful. Before, when I made the first version of the tier list, I put it somewhere low. It is not low, that's for sure. It is a really strong page that builds an entire niche on Net's Explore, and you really should take it alongside with Left Powder and Flower Petals, and you can get a lot of stuff out of it. Next has the Silent Orchestra. First we have Repeating Performance. You add a page to the head that you can use to restore light and basically end the scene. It is useful, you can end mass text this way. That can basically cheese liu association, that's useful, that's pretty good in my opinion. It is strong even like against Xiao, who has a rotating ability, so you can skip one of the turns when you cannot clash with the reverse scale, so you can clash with it later, so I think somewhere like in limited tier. Next we are on duration. It's so strong because all enemies target random characters including their own allies for 2 scenes, and they deal 2 to 4 additional damage with attacks. As far as I understand, the chance of attacking your ally is so much higher than attacking your enemy with random duration that the enemies will just kill themselves in those 2 scenes, like easily. This is a very strong buff, and if you are not going for a Nezach Spin Genesis build, you can go for from the duration and just kill everybody with their own attacks. It's not like even you killing them, they just kill themselves. Next is the finale. Whenever select Librarian staggers an enemy, all enemies lose 1 to 6 light inside the next scene. Does not work on bosses, does not work in many stations where Shimmering is active. It's not as strong in my opinion, there aren't many stations where you will really want to use finale over ferment duration, so I don't think you should take it like at all. Next we have Tifa's Flow with her magical girls. First we have the Queen of Hatred with her ability Justice, which marks one of the enemies as a villain and you deal additional damage to the villain. It is very similar to Walk AP, which is why it goes on the paper tier as well, fuck you. Love, after winning a clash using offensive die, random ally recovers HP. After winning a clash using defensive die, random ally recovers 2 to 4 stagger damage. That's really useful because you can restore your entire enemy's HP and stagger, and if you're running a solo Exodia, or you cannot run Exodia build with Love, but if you're running some kind of other solo build on Tifres, which there are a couple new ones, you can use Love to your advantage to heal HP and stagger resist by just winning clashes, so that's nice. It is an addition to Mind and Hell's Horse in that regard, so I think it is somewhere in the limited tier. I've always liked this page, I still do. And next we have Hate. After losing a clash, take 2 to 4 staggered damage and gain 1 strength next scene up to 2%. After losing 3 clashes, reduce the cost of the most expensive page in hand by 1, once per scene. Basically you have to lose clashes to activate it, it's not too great in my opinion. I mean, you have to take a lot of stagger damage, but you gain 1 strength and you also then reduce the cost of a page. It's useful, but not in all stations. I find it to be pretty risky to take early on, but if you are confident that you will lose a lot of clashes but not die, take Hate and kill enemies, I guess. Blades weighted by teardrops. On a successful piece attack, if the die rolled max value, deal bonus damage equal to 10% of the target's max HP. This plus stress disposal, this plus stress disposal means that you can deal so much damage to the enemy. Like by recycling dice, you can deal a lot of damage, and with like piece attacks in general, just without recycling dice, if you do not want to take the garbage of a page that the sweeper pages are, you just take any other page with some kind of pierce support, you slap on a couple of pierce pages, and voila, you have a strong attacker. Now the chance of that happening is only 10%, you still can incredibly easily kill on all of your enemies. Also it deals 2 damage, I'm pretty sure, which cannot be resisted, so you can just kill the enemies with even the highest of resistances, so that's really nice. Next we have Blessing. And Blessing is basically the ability of all for Hana. I don't think I have to really explain that. You change the amount of your resistances to endured if for the damage that you took the most in the last scene. It's very useful for tanks. If you run some kind of tank build on difference, then... Oh yeah, there is tank build on difference. I just thought to call you needed, but there is one, yeah. It is useful. And it's even useful in general, because All for Hana is a strong ability. Despair, whenever in like this, all other allies gain 1 to 3 strength and haste, and all enemies inflicted with too fragile. Well, you have to kill your own allies for that to activate. With Exodia, I guess that's a one-time buff to everything that will annihilate your enemies, but without Exodia, yeah. That sound is all I have to say about this. Greed is the one Exodia page that I actually unerringly take without Exodia and find it to be really useful, because if you win a clash by 4 or higher, you deal 3 to 7 bonus damage and recover 2 to 5 HP. The same is true for your enemy, but just don't let them do that. I guess you have control over your pages and they don't, so you can easily manage your clashes in such a way that you will deal additional damage and heal yourself all the time. It's really useful for tier 2, it's just a incredibly strong effect, which gets even stronger with Exodia, but I mean everything goes stronger with Exodia, so that doesn't count. Next we have Intemperance. The first die of a combat page is the first die of the combat page wins the clash, destroy all remaining dice on the opponent has... all the remaining dice the opponent has at a 25% chance. Basically, every first die clash will break all dice in the enemy's page, which is really useful for a second dice turn pages in some situations, because it is still a 25% chance, so you have to rely on RNG for this to happen, but you can open your enemies for more attacks by breaking the dice, or do whatever you want really, because it is really strong. It is a useful page. You probably won't take it that much above other pages, so I will put it in the hardcover tier, but notice it is strong, but it is overshadowed by some other pages. Next we have Road to Happiness. Gain 1 endurance for each clash won in a scene, up to 3%. Well, that's basically 3 free endurance. Who wouldn't take that? For a tank build, or like just builds with block dice in general, it's a strong page, you will probably take it a lot. Next we have Acidic Sludge. Inflict 5 erosion to all enemies. Enemies with erosion also gain binding equal to the amount of erosion they currently have. That's just incredibly strong, a tier 3 page with a straightforward and strong ability. Erosion, by the way, is fragile, stagger fragile, and burn all in one thing, and with bind from Acidic Sludge as well, so that's just object dart, man. I like this page a lot. Next we have Companion. Companion is a page that I never understood. When there is no companion present, the first enemy the selected librarian attacks is marked as a companion. When the selected librarian defeats the companion, all librarians resource relight and recover 10 HP and stagger resist. Well, you have to kill enemies with it, so it doesn't work on bosses. And 3 light and 10 HP and stagger resist per kill is not that strong in late game as well. This is really weird, and the selected librarian has to kill the companion. And they don't have any buffs against the companion. And you just have to manage them killing the companion, so you have to count and stuff, and I don't know if it is worth it really. I've never understood the companion ability. I mean, I understand how it works, but I don't understand how it can be like really useful for you in what situations you will take it all the time. So I don't think there are some situations. I think it's just mediocre at best. So it will go in the hardcover tier. Next we have Res. Res is probably the worst page out of all Exodia pages. You lose complete control after... You lose all control on the selected librarian, but they gain 2 strengths, restore to light, and turtle more pages. But they also can attack allies. Basically, you will not take this page unless you run Exodia, so I am putting it here. I'm not saying that it is bad with Exodia. I understand about the existence of that ability, of that strategy, okay? I know where the strategy is, and there is a page that I will rank to show you that I know that, but on its own, you will not take rest at all. Never. Next we have the remade magical girls. As out of the scene, a combat page in hand with the highest cost, that is lower than 4, is marked with a magical symbol. After losing 4 clashes with the marked page, gain 5 protection next scene, and become immune to status elements for the rest of the session. Also when hit, inflict 1 erosion and fragile next scene to the attacker. This plus Blessing can make you an offensive tank just like on Marcus floor, so it is really useful as well. It is a pretty strong ability because it also inflicts erosion, and erosion is just a great ability on its own. I'm pretty sure you can stack erosion with this one and stack it really easily, in solo builds that is, so you can just break enemies by just taking damage and not doing anything. That's so useful, and I find it to be a great strategy. Maybe actually object dart even. Next I have Void, also a strategy that is now somehow popular on Tifa's floor. Add on all returns to the Void page to hand, cost 3, combat starting, exhaust all pages from hand, every scene after this, gain strength and endurance equal to the number of pages exhausted this way. I don't know what to say about this really. I guess with some kind of defensive light region page, I mean if you play some kind of defensive page and some kind of light region page, like say you play, I don't know, Beyond plus Will the City, or better yet, that one Oswald page that gives you 2 light. I mean, it gives you 3 light for the cost of 1 light, or 4 light for the cost of 2, I don't remember, but it gives you a net gain of 2 light. And you also use all returns to the void in that scene. All the other pages get exhausted, you get a lot of endurance, you use that endurance with Beyond to draw the other page, and you always like turn between those pages. That's the only thing I can come up with, but I think it is still useful. And I mean, the only reason I'm coming up with this is because it can be used with magical girls for even more profit, so I think it's useful. That's all I'm gonna say, I think it's useful. Next up, Nyx. Difference Exodia. It's still not stronger than Milk is for. I'm sorry. Prey, tier 1. Mark the first enemy that is attacked by this librarian. As the page is selected, deal 6 additional damage when attacking the Mark 4. It's weak. Vengeance. It's been nerfed up to 2, now you cannot gain more strength than 2 in one scene, and it gives you 1 strength per 5 damage that you've taken in a scene, and you cannot get more than 2 strengths, so overall, I know, section of this page, it's not that useful. Next, Adult Belts. Is librarian's HP is at 50%, 35%, 25% or lower, gain 1 to 4 strengths respectively. I think it was stronger before. There was some kind of ability that could stack the strengths, or maybe the page itself stacks the strengths. Now it's not that strong, you have to be at low HP all the time to get 4 strengths. I mean, 4 strengths is still really strong for 25% HP, but like, I don't know. It's useful with Fusion, I guess. With Fusion it is game breaking. It's just like, it's somewhere here, along with the other pages, let them all be there. Next we have Claws of Savagery. That gives you the ability to become untargetable and uncrashable next scene if you sustain more than 25% of your max HP in one scene. The librarian also gains 2 strengths and inflicts 1 bleed with each successful attack. Basically, you have a scene free of clashing with enemies where you can inflict lots of damage and bleed, and with enough healing you can actually out-heal that and probably use that again and again and again. So yeah, Claws of Savagery, pretty useful actually, somewhere alongside Request. Next you have Instincts. Each time the Sludge Librarian wins a clash, the last die on the current page gains 1 power, recovers 3 to 7 HP on successful hit with that final die. It's useful because with pages that have a lot of dice, you can easily stack a lot of power on the last die and recover HP on hitting that die, and you will probably hit the die because you have power, and with recycling dice you can do so much destruction. So yeah, Instinct's pretty strong. I like to take them all the time because I am a fan of healing on Gebra's floor, because you know, that's something that Red Mist lacks a bit. Roll of the Wolf. Counter dice gain 1 to power, counter dice inflict 2 fragile upon winning clash. That's just really strong with Gebra with her Red Mist page, because she has the ability that gives her a constant slash counter die that gets buffed by Rose Wolf and makes her inflict fragile on hit, so that's useful. Next we have Mountain of Silent Bodies and its ability Absorption. For the action of the act, it covers 90% of the max HP upon defeating an enemy. At the start of the scene, gain strength based on the amount of HP the librarian has to cover this act. 1 strength per 10% of max HP healed, up to 3. I'm pretty sure before it you had to kill an enemy to get 1 strength, now you have to kill an enemy to get 2 strengths, so it's even more useful. I find Absorption to be really good. At some point it wasn't limited, now it's only max 3 strengths. It is still really strong, 3 strengths is nice, and also you heal a lot of HP from killing enemies, so you can use it in an act just to heal yourself to max HP easily, so that's always useful. Next we have Laughter. You deal stagger damage to all enemies and allies if you take damage under 50% HP, which is like, you deal damage to your own allies, why? Mountain of Corpses on the other hand kills your enemies outright, but it gives you so much strength, protection, haste, and light restoration, and max light capacity that Sludge is so strong. Especially on Red Mist, you basically gain infinite light, so you can always spam split vertical, horizontal, you can spam all of her pages and get a lot of strengths, and that's really, Mountain of Corpses is my first purple tier clear. That's why I find that boss to be easy, because he just kind of swept her entirely with a full HP Red Mist at the end. Like, it was so easy. It's such a strong page, especially when you have all 5 librarians alive and you consume 4 of them to get 4 strength, protection, haste, light restoration, max life capacity. It's so strong. Next we have Fear of Water. On hit inflict 1 bleed next scene and gain 1 blood. Blood gains various effects depending on its amount, such as increasing damage to of HP, taking stack damage at the start of the scene, and granting strength. It's not too bad. The only downside to this page is that as soon as you take it, you have 1 blood, meaning that as soon as you start the scene, you will still take stagger damage because of the amount of blood. I think that's just an oversight. I'm pretty sure it should be fixed, because you just take the page and you immediately take stagger damage. You cannot really avoid that, but outside of that, it's not that bad of a page. I mean, it's as useful as Fear of Water before the update, but now it can give you strengths, so it's useful. Vampirism is now tier 1, and you deal plus 2 to 4 damage and recover 2 to 5 HP upon attacking target is bleed. I mean, with Fear of Water, once again, you gain a lot of HP and damage from that. That's very useful. And knowing that they changed around the slash and level slash, you will probably go for level slash for bleed that you can then turn into HP and damage with Vampirism at tier 1, so it's like, it's a really strong combination. I found new... Why did I put it here? It's definitely somewhere in Object Dart. I talk and just put them in random places, and then just forget to put them in where they actually belong. Wine, upon defeating an enemy with bleed, all allies recover 10 HP and slightly bring its max blood. It's useful once again if you have Fear of Water and Vampirism all in one, then Wine will heal a lot of HP on your entire team. and will give you max blood, which will result in getting, I think, 2 strengths and purging all blood. So it's still pretty good with Fear Water, because you will probably attack enemies more than 3 times in the scene, so you will get back to your normal blood, so you can deal more damage. So it's a strong combination, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Next we have Hello. You recover HP equal to the amount of damage your first die in a scene did. That's like strong, that's a lot of healing. Goodbye. You double the power of your last die, literally use 1 Grasping Horizontal and nothing else, and you will kill the entire enemy team with like 90 strings on 1 mass attack. That's an insane ability. Shell, nullify all incoming stagger damage from attacks. Yep. And now we have Chizet's Flaw. It starts with the ability Harvest. After attacking an enemy with the highest amount of stagger resist than you, the Librarian, I mean, deal 2 to 4 more stagger damage and recover 2 to 5 stagger resist. I mean, the weird thing about this ability is that it works against targets with high stagger damage, stagger resist, but it also gives you stagger resist and takes away from them, so you will have a hard time using this ability more than once, realistically. Against bosses though, it is really strong at whittling them down in the stagger department, while also recovering your stagger even stronger than Manhauler, so you can use those 2 points to get a stronger passive ability. So realistically, Harvest is pretty strong against bosses, but not that strong against normal enemies, so it's somewhere in the low limited tier in my opinion. Rake. After staggering an enemy, copy 2 pages surrounded by that enemy and add them to Librarian's hand with 2 less cost. The copied pages are exhausted on use. Pretty self-explanatory, you just get the enemy's pages and you can use them. If the enemy has a lot of really strong pages, you can copy them and make the enemy suffer. But you have to stagger them first, so it won't be of much use on bosses. But against normal enemies, you can easily get access to Hana's station's pages before you beat them. And like, throwing an Augury kick on Miranea never felt so strong than with Rake. So it's somewhere probably around Harvest. It's not incredibly strong, but it has its users, and the users are pretty strong. Stone of Wisdom. Whenever Librarian uses a page, discard on a page from hand and restore 1 light. I don't understand this page because it uses discard, and discard is a word I usually try to avoid when playing the entirety of Library of Ruina. Then we have a Warm Heart. At the start of the scene, boost the power of offensive dice by 1 to 2 for the scene if the Librarian has 3 or more light. That's just really strong, because you can have your light at 3 or more at all times at higher emotion levels, and if you're not using many mass stacks, you will probably stay at high light for the entirety of the fight. That will just give you +2 power to offensive, +1 to 2 power to offensive dice, which is always useful. So that's somewhere in middle limited tier. I think it's not Object Dart, that's for sure. Next we have Cardiac. After dealing 15 or more damage to the enemies in the single scene, reduce the cost of 2 most expensive pages in hand by 1. On kill, reduce the cost to 0 instead. The cost reduction is reset when the pages are used. It is really useful because it targets your most expensive page without a cost cap, meaning that if you have like a maxim with a 6 cost mass stack, you can just deal a lot of damage and lower the amount of light that you have to spend, so it is easier to also hold on to your ability from a Warm Heart. So really those pages work together really well to create a strong combination of just like light usage in general. Next you have Timber. When attacking a target that has more light than the Librarian, offensive dice gain power equal to the amount of light the target has. I don't know, I don't find this to be really strong, because you will probably want to have your light at the highest amount possible, and many enemies don't have like enormous amounts of light. Many enemies, the strongest enemies have just shimmer and no light at all. They just have their pages at 0 cost all the time, so it's not that strong in my opinion. If you're running low on light, then sure you can get like strengths, but it's up to 2 strengths and you can get that from a warm heart by just keeping your light at full. And then you'll also be stable with light, so I mean that's just better, so it's somewhere here probably, somewhere in Hakawa tier. I don't think this paperback, it has its uses, but once again it's not that great, also this should be higher. Courage. Courage is a general strong page that gives you 2 strengths and protection if you have a full team, and you can use it at the start of the game. So it's not the game, but the start of the battle, so it's really useful. It's just 3 strengths, 3 protection, very useful, very easy to use as well. You don't have to think about anything, you just click the button and you have strengths. And next we have Road Walk Together. If an ally redirects an attack that was initially targeted on this character, doesn't that ally's page gain 1 or 2 power in the clash? Basically, if you have an ally that you want to protect, you just give them this page and you redirect the attack from them and you win clashes easily because you have power. That's not too bad. But I still think it's hardcover tier because it is overshadowed by like other things. Home. Numbered targets are placed up on 3 enemies. Each time a target is attacked in the correct order, increase outgoing damage by 3 with the scene. Next we have Ozma and her abilities. Oblivion. Oblivion adds a page that makes you immobilized and untargetable for a scene. At the end of the scene, fully restore light and recover 40% of max HP. That's really strong. I find this page to be really useful in many stations because you can just recover HP, recover light, and not take any damage in a scene. With Bayat you can also gain like 6 strengths from nothing. It's useful. It's definitely very strong. Probably even Object Dart tier. I like this page a lot. I take it really often on Shield's floor as a failsafe mechanism, I guess. Next we have Powder of Life. After taking lethal damage, nullify it and recover 20% of max HP. That's it. You just revive with 20% of max HP, and that's all I got. I mean, and it is a great ability because if you die, you can't really go back unless you use that one ego page, but this Abnormality page gives the ability to come back for the entire team. And it's also breakdown, so with Yan it can give you 1 strength as well, so that's strong. Power of the Past increases the cost of combat pages by 1, but all dice gain 3 to 4 power. I still haven't figured out how to use this page properly, but it is not too bad in my opinion. But like my opinion is only speculation because I have never actually managed to make this page really useful. I've always been short on light. So it's somewhere in like hardcover tier because it's outshadowed by the fact that there are pages that make you think much less than this one. Now we have the Adult Hotel's Lies with the Abnormality page Emerald. Add an Emerald page to hand, cost 5, cancel 2 random combat pages on the target speed dice, recover 1 light for each successful hit on the target is seen, up to 2. I mean, it's useful. I think you can delete some kinds of mass attacks on your enemy if they're fortunate enough. And Restoration of Light is also pretty useful because this is a 5 cost page, and without the light restoration perk it wouldn't be as desired because, you know, 5 cost. I mean, it can delete a mass attack, but also like, is it worth that much? Probably yeah actually, but with the ability to restore light it's even better, so why wouldn't you want that ability to happen? Next we have False Present, at tier 3 page once again. No, everyone was tier 2, okay. At 0 cost, False Present pages that activate on play to the Ego pages list. Liquid Courage, Silk of Stack of Slowdust, Heart of Lead, Harm that cannot be reached, and Transformation. No effect is given to two librarians at once. The False Present pages are also added to the Ego page list at the start of subsequent acts. Before it gave you the abilities randomly, you could not choose. Now you can actually choose what librarians to use the Ego pages on, so you have a bit more control over the abilities, but that's it. I think I put it somewhere in paperback before, maybe hardcover, now it is still hardcover, but I mean high hardcover. Magic Trick, add a Magic Trick page to hand, cost 4. Player reduces the cost of all pages to hand in hand to 0, when used their cost is set to the value before this effect was applied. This can give us the ability to use like multiple 4 cost pages for 0 cost, and the greatest thing about this is it doesn't only give you for that, it doesn't only give you the ability for one scene. If you do not use one of the pages, you will still retain the ability until you use it like in any scene. So you can wait for a certain moment and then just strike your enemy. So that's really useful in my opinion. That's somewhere in probably Object Dart tier is really strong. You can throw a barrage of incredibly strong abilities at the enemy really quickly. No. Okay, now we move on to the last layer of floors with business floor first. We have here Abnormality, Big Bird. With Abnormality page, Eternally Lit Lamp. Any enemies this target, the librarian targets, will be forced to target the librarian back, regardless of its speed. The usage of this page is simple. Use Bina to counter your enemy's strongest attacks, even if they have a lot of speed. The first usage is of course against Red Mist's Glitter Split horizontal, vertical, that you can just retake with the pillar, delete, and that's it. And that's kind of the main ability of Eternal Lit Lamp. I don't really know about any other abilities, any other ways of using it. I guess you can use it against Punishing Bird in its reception, but that's it. It's not limited, that's for sure. It's somewhere in like low hardcover. Salvation. On that gain +1 power against enemies with higher speed. If target's HP is at 25% or lower, destroy all of the dice upon winning a clash. I mean, that's pretty easy. If you use it in conjunction with Eternal Lit Lamp, you will always gain +1 power against enemies with high speed, and you can retake their abilities, retake their attacks. And if they are at low HP, you can just bully them into non-existence. So that's useful. It is a tier 2, but like it's not like you're going to have an enemy at lower than 25% HP on tier 1, so it doesn't really matter. Next we have Watchful Eyes. Fully restores the selected librarian's light. Each single random ally gains no light, while the selected librarian restores 1 additional light. I think the ability to fully restore light is nullified by the fact that this is a tier 1 page. And with the new emotion coins mechanic, you only need 3 emotion coins to proceed to level 1 and to level 2. So, I mean, you don't need the full light restoration on those 1 and 2 levels. So that kind of makes Watchful Eyes a bit less useful. But I guess on solo builds it can be useful. But there is a solo build on Bina that we will come to later, and it does not involve Watchful Eyes, so I don't know. I guess it's also in hardcover tier, probably even worse than Eternal Lit Lamp. Also, I probably should actually buff Eternal Lit Lamp, it's not that bad. Next we have Punishing Bird, with this Punishing Beak. The librarian's attacks deal bonus damage equal to the number of scenes that pass without the librarian taking damage from attacks. Basically, if you don't take damage, you will gain additional damage you can deal, so I mean that's just straight up useful. But not insane, and it is actually hard to maintain. But if you have a lead in the amount of speed dice you have, like if you're facing a boss like Xiao, you can use Punish and Big on one of your librarians, and you will not actually lose its ability from taking damage from burn, as it only counts from taking damage from attacks, so you can still burn to death, but you will still have the plus 10 damage from Punish and Big, so it is useful. Punishment is just a generally strong page that gives you the ability to, after taking damage, the first dive of the first scene. Forget it. After taking damage, the first dive, the first page that Librarian uses next scene, gains 2 to 4 power. I mean, that's just pretty strong. You gain a buff to your first die, but you have to take damage, but it's not like you're not going to take damage. The game of Librarian is hard, so yeah. It's generally just like a 2 to 4 power gain for the first die in the scene, so like why wouldn't you use it? Especially with Venus Pillars that can use a 2 to 4 power to easily outclash all of your opponent's dice, so that's actually really good when you think about it a bit longer. Then we have Small Flutters. If 8 dice gain 1 to 2 power, upon winning a clash using the 8 dice, the next offensive die gains 1 to 2 power. The thing with the 8 dice is that they reroll after winning a clash, meaning you can win like 4 clashes at once and then use one offensive die after that and just deal like 20 damage. It's really strong. Especially with pages like Will of the Priesthood, which have a strong lead in a weight die that goes into a strong offensive die, so it is just like a perfect page for this Abnormality page, so I think Small Flutters is a pretty useful page, not limited honestly, it's not that strong. Next we have Judgment. At the start of the scene, all characters gain one sin at a 50% chance. If a character has 5 plus sin, they take damage equal to 10% of their max HP at the start of the scene, and all sin is removed from them. Sin can be transferred to another character by attacking and damaging them, once per page. Did you like the gimmick of Judgment Bird, the Abnormality fight? No? Well, here it is again. But it's on your side now. Well, not really. Basically, you can kill your enemies really quickly, especially bosses, by just attacking them with sin, getting them to 5 plus sin and just making them take 20% of their max HP as damage, which is really easy to do, as you can just get sin on all of your librarians, make them all attack the enemy once, and voila, you have 5 sin on them, they will take damage. It's really useful in my opinion, and hard to maintain as well. It is kind of an anti-boss ability, but in full team battles it is really difficult to understand what's happening with the sin. It's difficult to manage it, so I think it's in high hardcover tier, but only because it kills bosses easily, but with any kind of other encounter it struggles a lot. The weight of sin. Whenever a dice Silverian plays rolls the minimum value, takes 2 to 7 damage and gain 1 to 2 strength and endurance next scene. The damage taken, it's but I find it to not be that big of a deal, but the 1 strength and endurance is also not that big of a deal. I mean, it doesn't really change much, so I think why would it take it? I mean, it is a tier 1 page, so in some situations you might want to take it, but I don't know. I don't find it to be that useful. Now we have Total Scale, my favorite page from Venus Floor entirety. After attacking an enemy with the most HP, recover the HP of the ally with the least HP by 2 to 8. Basically, if you're fighting a boss, you recover 2 to 8 HP of the ally with lowest HP every hit. That's just really strong. But only 3 times per scene, so it is kind of a lock on the amount of HP you can heal, but it is still enough to have your entire team be ready for boss battles all the time. So like you're not going to die against like Xiao. Yeah, no, it is until that, okay. I'm thinking, should I put it there? I probably should. Next we have the 3 Apocalypse Bird X. We start with Big Eyes. Inflict enchanted to all enemies, enchanted enemies target the librarian and deal +2 to 4 damage with attacks, gain 1 to power when clashes against enchanted enemies, and recover 2 to 5 HP and stagger resist upon win and clash. Basically a much better version of Hot's Glitter. Where did I put that? Here it is. But this one is much better, and it counts to be an Exodia, so I'll put it much higher. Next we have Long Arms. Take no damage from certain status of elements. Burn, Bleed, Fairy and Sin. That is generally useful. There are many debuff inflictors in the game, and you can just nullify them by taking Long Arms, and once again it also counts into being Exodia, so that's really useful. Next we have Small Big. Add a Small Big page to hand, cost 0 on play, take 5% of max HPS damage, restore 1 light. I mean, that's useful, you get 1 light for damage, and well, that's it, really. I don't think it's actually limited, maybe someone had covered here. And next we have the 3 tier 3 pages from Apocalypse Bird. Starting with Guardians of the Forest. All librarians gain 1 haste at the start of the scene. If all 5 librarians each have an Abnormality page, gain 1 to strength and endurance in addition. It's not that strong. I mean, if all of you have 1 page, then it's like useful, but also I don't know if it's worth the payoff of only 1 strength and endurance. It's actually matter too, but still, like, I don't think it's enough to warrant you not taking a lot of pages for one librarian, because you want to make them work together in many stations, like Eternal Lit Lamp and this, yeah, I forgot its name. Wait, what's the name of the page? Salvation, yeah. Eternal Lit Lamp plus Salvation is a great combo, and if you cannot take that, then like both of those pages on their own aren't strong, so I don't know. Guardians of the Forest literally makes some of the pages just weaker, because you cannot take them in combo, so it's not too strong in my opinion. Next we have Peace. Peace previously was my favorite tier 3 Abnormality page on Venus Floor, because you mark an enemy as intruder and you deal 1-2 bonus damage against them and take 2 to 4 less physical and stagger damage. That's useful against bosses, but now I think before it was stronger, now it has been weakened, I'm pretty sure. But it's also not as strong as the Beast. It's somewhere like here. But now we have the Beast, aka Bina Exodia. Activates when the selected librarian possesses all the following Abnormality pages: Big Eyes, Small Beak, and Long Arms. All dice of characters targeted or targeted by this character are unaffected by power gain or loss, and their minimum and maximum values are lowered by 3. At the end of the scene, all other characters take 15 damage, and this character fully restores light. Basically you have infinite light, and all of your enemies cannot buff themselves, but always have a -3 to strength that is hid behind lowering the values. And you deal 15 damage to all enemies and all allies as well. With the ability of Lone Fixer, you can outstrength your enemies by 6 all the time, and that will be really strong. The strength of this ability is that the power nullification does not work on the librarian that uses it, I'm pretty sure, so only on the enemies. So that's really useful. You just opt into buffing yourself and not debuffing enemies, and because the debuffs won't really work, but the buffs of the enemies won't work as well, because you have power nullification. I mean, it's strong. I think it's a bit weaker than Difference Exodia, but it is really much easier to get, because you only need, I think, 1 breakdown page after all of this. No, actually 2 of them. but they are much easier to get, and you only have to use 3 pages, so you have a 4th page to choose to your liking, and yeah, that's easier to fulfill than Tifris condition. It's somewhere like here-ish, maybe lower. Yeah, somewhere here. It's not as strong as Tifris Exodia, but I mean, it's pretty good. Also, I kind of overestimate Tifris Exodia. Probably like here. And now we have our last floor to rank. We have Hawkman's floor, with its ability, attention and focus from the Abnormality Burning Heaven. Didn't take twice as much stagger damage on a deflect. Hawkman's floor is all about defense and deflects and block dice, and dealing double stagger damage and deflect is just an insane ability. You can just easily deflect stagger the entire enemy team, and that's just great. I mean, that's very useful. Next we have Gaze of Others. Deal 2 to 4 additional damage in one-sided attacks. In a clash, deal 3 to 6 less damage, but block dice gain 1 to 3 power. Once again, with block dice being so strong on Hawkman's floor, you just use Gaze of Others, and instead of dealing damage, you deal stagger damage to the enemies with block deflects. So yeah, just take a ominous power build and it'll be alright. Next, Limber the Wings. The entire reason why Hawkman has strong deflects, because you deal half of the block dice roll as physical damage to the opponent on a deflect, so I mean, you weaponize your blocks, which is nice. Reminds me of that one video I saw when like 2 knights were fighting, and one of them had a sword, one of them had a shield, and the guy with the shield just fucking smacked the other guy in the head with the shield, and the guy just fell, and like, that became a meme for a short time, and I like that meme a lot, and this reminds me of that meme of just weaponizing your deflects. Next we have Silence. Silence is kind of useless. I mean, I still don't understand why you would take 25% of your max HP to take 5 bind to all other characters. I mean, I don't understand this page at all. The only use of this page I can come up with is using Silence with Alan, using his combat page Stiletto, so you can get 5 strengths from this page. And if you use both on play pages, I mean on use pages both, you get like 10 power for Stiletto, but like, I don't know why you would do it. I can't even formulate any sentence about this page. It's just so awful. The Rushing Stall on the other page is really strong. Every 13th combat page this librarian plays gains 1 to the power. The dice on the page also gains the following effect. On hit, deal bonus damage equal to dice value % of target's max HP. That's really strong, because you just throw out some kind of attack with one strong die, and bam, you deal like half of the enemy's HP as damage. And if you have a lot of strong dice, for example with page Ever Spinning Gearwell, or like the one 6 cost exclusive page of Tanya after the third Vibration Ensemble, you can deal like literally hundreds of damage in one attack, and that's just so strong. And I've seen many like chi strategies with Bamboo-Headed Kill and like other characters just shotting Red Mist, like Purple Tear, Xiao, Pluto even, like so much was done with this page. It's so strong with chis. 4 chis, I mean. Time is a friend of all solo builds and is an enemy of all non-solo builds. Definitely limited. Actually paperback in my opinion. It's useful when you have only one librarian, because it just then gives you 1 to 2 power to all dice. but if you have more than one librarian, it's difficult to manage them all in 30 seconds, so yeah. Next we have a nostalgic sound. All allies deal 2 to 4 additional stagger damage for this scene. The effect of this page activates every 3 scenes afterwards. It's weird because it's only every 3 scenes, but I mean it's free 2 to 4 additional stagger damage, and that's always nice. Especially if you have recycled dice once again. So it's somewhere in the limited tier, maybe a bit low I think. You know what, actually let's put it in hardcover tier. Next we have Mario. Add a Mario page to hand, cost 0 on play for the scene, deal 4 to 6 bonus stagger damage with attacks but take 1 to 3 damage at successful attack. Basically you take damage but deal bonus stagger damage. You see you only take 1 to 3 damage, so you take 2 damage on average, and that's the exact amount of HP you can recover from Mind Holler, and if you have Swice keeping in stride, you can easily out-heal this page's downside, and you can deal 4 to 6 bonus stagger damage with each attack, and that's like, wow, that's really strong. I find Macho to be really strong. I don't know if it was always like this. I think when I first saw it I was like, wow, such useless page, but now it is like incredible. I wonder if it had any kind of update, because I can't remember really. Penance is our last page of the blue star. At the matter, no, that's matter. If any character is staggered at the start of the scene, they take 3 to 7 damage and all allies gain more strength for the scene. Multiple staggered characters do not give more strength. Basically you gain strength if you stagger an enemy. That's useful, I guess. And they also take 3 to 7 damage, but that's not that big of a deal. It's just all the strength that you get from nothing. So I guess it's useful because you will stagger enemies in like all-out brawls, though that does not work on bosses. So somewhere here in World Limited because it doesn't work on bosses. Next we have White Knights pages, starting with Baptism. Add a Baptism page to hand, cost 2 on play, return to hand. Target recovers 6 HP and gains 1 endurance this scene once per scene. It's useful on its own because you can give HP and endurance to allies. If you have a lot of light regen, you can continuously reuse Baptism and heal your allies a lot, making like a really strong heal and support with Baptism itself. So it's somewhere like in low limited tier. On its own, I want to clarify, on its own. Advent is what makes Baptism a lot stronger. For the duration of the reception, restore 1 additional light at the start of the scene. If the Sludge Librarian also has the Abnormality page Baptism, its effect is enhanced. Target recovers 12 HP and gains 2 endurance this scene. Basically it doubles the effect of Baptism, so it is really strong. And it also gives you 1 free light every scene, so that's nice. Next we have Confession, fully recover stagger resist and purge all status elements, also applies to staggered librarians. For the duration of the reception, take 2 less stagger damage from attacks. I'm pretty sure it recovers your librarians from stagger, I guess, judging from the fact that size also applies to stagger librarians, so it is useful. It also gives you continuous stagger protection to stagger protection forever, so it is really useful. I find stagger protection to be much more useful than normal protection because the normal protection doesn't really matter when you take double damage, really. Well, it matters a bit, but not that much. I think somewhere in low object.tier. I like this page a lot. And next we have the 3 tier 3 page. Starting with Apostles. Once the character is alive, all other allies deal 2 to 7 additional damage with attacks. If the character has used Baptism 12 or more times with reception, allies also gain +1 power. This is a continuation of the Baptism plus Advent line, which is stronger when used with Baptism and Advent once again. It gives you allies strength and gives them damage. Basically you become a support that not only heals your enemies, but by existing also makes your other allies much stronger, and yeah, that's it. I put it somewhere like in low longevity as well. I think this page works really well with Veteran plus Advent. Next we have Divine Power. While this character is alive, all other allies gain 2 protection each scene. If this character has also used White Knight's Eagle page, allies also absorb instances of 3 or less damage. That's really useful because with the 2 protection that means you can absorb everything that's 5 or that rolls 5 or less, which is a really strong defensive ability in my opinion. You have to use Fitness Eagle page at that point, and I find it to be like more useful to stay in the Eagle ability, unless it also applies to all the people who have turned into apostles after the White Knight's Eagle usage, so that might be useful, that might work, and in that case it is really useful because you just make your apostles really tanky with that, because apostles really like to die because they don't have a lot of HP really. And our last final page of this tier list, Sentinel. As long as there are other allies that can be targeted, the Select Librarian will not be targeted for attacks. If this character is alive at the end of the reception, there is also an additional book for every guest defeated. The perfect farm page. Just use Sentinel on a difficult reception and you will get like twice the books. It's pretty useful, it makes one of your librarians untargetable. I don't know when you would really want one of your librarians to be untargetable. I guess if you're running a baptism deck but you do not want to take apostles for some reason, you can go for Sentinel, as that just makes you untargetable, meaning you can run a very weak physically deck on baptism and you will be alright. It's always limited tier, it's not as strong as the other tier 3 pages on White Knight, of White Knight, yeah, of White Knight, yes, that's true actually. And it can help you farm, but it doesn't really help you beat the receptions for the first time. And this is all I have for the tier list, the ultimate tier list of Library of Ruina Abnormality pages. 6 of them in the burnt tier. I am ready to hear how am I very wrong on these placements, but I'm pretty sure I've nailed all of this. I don't know why I put this so high, but it will continue staying there because, I don't know, this will be a meme from this point. Here's the entire tier list. Take a look at this if you skipped to this point. I know that many people skip till the part of when the tier list is done already. So yeah, there it is. And that's all I have to say for today. I sincerely thank you for watching, if you watched to this point, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.